Hey guys, Elagatua here. The new Hero Academy patch had just come out pretty recently, so I figured I'd do a few commentary games to talk about what's changed. I'm still running my stall kind of movement debuff animal deck. It's gotten better now because Swarm got buffed and a lot of other cards got nerfed. Amoris Armor and Rock On both got nerfed. So my deck is even better than it was before, in my opinion. And I've had some new additions to this deck that I'll talk about. But anyway, so we got a game against 13 here, and I'm commentating this after the fact, so this is not live. I was playing the game live, so I was trying to think about my moves, so didn't have time to talk about it there. But in this game here, my hand is really good at punishing overextension because I have Ragnarok and I have Halt and I have Freezing Tempest, so I'm starting to draw my combo pieces. So what I really want to do is I want him to build up a bunch of units on the board. Now this guy's number 2 champion rank right now, so he's probably aware of how this deck works and all the shenanigans that I'm planning on pulling, but he's still got to win the game somehow. He's still got to do crystal damage. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see kind of an interesting dance where he tries as hard as he can to avoid overcommitting on the board while still having enough on the board to threaten me enough for me to have to spend some of my big powerful cards. This is a difficult map, I think, for my deck. It's very open. The crystals are close to each other. Grove Guardian especially is very scary because a lot of these Warden decks now are running an Overpopulate in addition to a Gorgonize. And if you overpopulate the Grove Guardian next to my crystal so that 2 Grove Guardians can get a hit off on it, then you can pretty much do enough damage to the point where even if I get my combo off with this deck, it is going to be hard for me to do enough damage fast enough to win before fatigue starts hitting. So you can see here, I feel the need to already use Halt on his units, even though I'd really rather not. This is completely playing around the possibility of an overpopulate. Otherwise, there would be no need to play a Halt there. I could let him come over to my side of the board. So now he's got a bunch of units out, but he's still far away from my crystals. So what I'm thinking about doing is just blocking him. I'd love for him to spend another turn wasting some more resources so that I can either Ragnarok or now I've got my combo with Freezing Tempest plus the Brazier. So depending on what he does here, I'm either going to hit the combo or I'm going to wipe the board with Ragnarok. I'm just a little worried about if he gets his Tongue Bucket all the way up to my crystal, so I'm going to spend that card on it. And also my hand was filling up with a bunch of debuff cards, so if I didn't spend that card there, then my hand was going to get stuck. Now he gets lucky, of course, because unlike Bitcly, my 50% dodges never work. So he gets really lucky there and kills my Borefest, which also dispels the poison on his Grove Guardian. And so now I have to make a decision. If his poison hadn't gotten dispelled, I might have the option to try and do like the Brazier here, and then just clear everything, because the Brazier would freeze the Tongue Bucket, and then the Grove Guardian would probably tick out to the poison, or it's something like that. But this, unfortunately, just kind of made things more difficult for me. So now I did draw Pulmo here, and so I was faced with an interesting decision of whether I try to use Pulmo because I have no guys on the board, so it's actually a pretty decent situation to use him. But I didn't have that last point of damage to kill the Grove Guardian, and again, like, I'm afraid. I'm looking at his mana here, and I'm thinking 9 mana. You know, if I let this Grove Guardian live, he's going to overpopulate next to my top crystal and get 7 damage on it, and then I'm not going to be able to come back. So I don't actually know if his deck runs overpopulate. He's not going to show it off in this game, as far as I remember. But I'm worried about it. So in the end, I end up having to Ragnarok here, even though it's not really as nice a play as I want to, just because the threat of overpopulate would basically cost me the game immediately if he had it. Anyway, so that does clear the board for me. So now I have my other combo, which is going to freeze all the units on the board. And I want him to get a lot of melee units out to pop that combo off. Again, this puts me in a difficult spot because of the gnome, the 3/2 up at the top. If he gets right up next to my crystal and overpopulates again, then he's going to get 6 damage on my top crystal, and it's going to put me in that situation where I'm too far behind again. So what I want to do is I want to do something like, you know, Brain Basher, or, you know, potentially even like pop the combo here. You know, he's got 3 units on the board that aren't that great, but if he, you know, does overpopulate, it's just not that great. And I can take care of 2 of those units and then leave the Stoneling on the board, which is not that scary. And then I'm banking up some mana for next turn. Obviously, he's got a ton of mana, but he's spent more cards than me, and I've got a big combo coming up, potentially. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And obviously, that spider, he really made a mistake. I think he could have put that rat up a row, one row above where it ended up being, and it would have been safe for my spider there. But instead, he put it in front of his own crystal, and that let the spider clear it pretty much for. Not for free. It did 1 crystal damage to me, but it was very efficient for me to clear that off. So now I was a little confused as to like what he's doing here. I think he's going to end up rocking on, which for me is fine, because when he rocks on here, that's a lot of units on the board, and they're not in good position for him, because that one on top, I can poke it and move it away from my crystal, and then it's just frozen there. But now these other units come out, and it's a little more threatening. And so I've got to figure out what to do here. So there are 5 units on the board. So unless he has Gorgonize, he can't summon any more units. Without like an overpopulate or something, but he doesn't have any minions on the board that are good with overpopulate. So I'm going to play the combo here, and I'm basically just going to sack my bottom crystal, and I'm going to bet the whole game that he hasn't drawn his overpopulate, or sorry, his Gorgonize yet. He's only halfway through his deck, so it's possible that he hasn't drawn it yet. And there's a lot of these decks that actually don't run Gorgonize; they run overpopulate instead of Gorgonize. So really, I didn't have much of a choice, but to play that combo there, because his board state was just very scary, and I'm not going to be able to defend my bottom crystal. So the only chance I have of winning is to, you know, pop the combo and then try to come back from there. So he's turning cards, and actually it looks pretty good for me, because he does not play Gorgonize there. So if he had Gorgonize, I would have expected him to play it right away. Instead he doesn't, and so I take the liberty to move his guy out of the way. But I think he either draws it this turn, or he had it the whole time. I'm not sure actually. We can see. I didn't remember this at the time. So we'll see whether his Gorgonize costed 6 mana. No, it costed 5. So he had it last turn, actually, because you saw the mana seeds did the mana lowering of the cost of the Gorgonize. So he had it last turn. He chose not to spend it, which is interesting. Maybe he was hoping to get an efficient trade of whatever I played, which kind of worked out for him. I ended up being a Viper, so it wasn't like a super expensive unit that he killed of mine. But yeah, so basically at this point, I'm more or less dead because I've popped my 2 big combos and I'm behind on board. And he had the Gorgonize. What I'm going to try to do is try to get board control back, but I know that if he has Savage Strength, pretty much at any point, there's not much that I can do, and he hasn't played any Nut Lobbers, so he's still got those potentially, and obviously he's way ahead on crystal damage. So at this point, the combo didn't quite work out for me in this case because he had the Gorgonize. So I definitely recommend, like, if you're running this Warden Zoo deck, that you definitely don't sacrifice the Gorgonize. Because if he did not have the Gorgonize, he was stone cold dead. He had no way to get rid of his units. All his units would have been stuck, and I would have just taken that Brain Basher out and whacked away at his crystal a bunch of times, and that would have been the game. So, but that's kind of how this matchup works a lot of times. Is if they have the cards in the right situation, then there's not much you can do. I mean, he also played pretty intelligently not to overextend in this game. I think I posted a video earlier about another player using this same kind of deck, but he got a big board advantage, and then he thought that he was just going to roll me over. And he spent about 4 cards buffing up this huge board when I was deliberately saving up for the Ragnarok, and I just wiped his board completely, and he immediately rage quit. So 13 does a good job of not falling into that trap. And then he had the Shrivel, which is really good because the only way I could have won this game is by trying to basically burn down his crystals while defending mine. And so as soon as that Brain Basher died, I knew that there was basically no way that I could come back. I do have the 2 Spiderlings, so if for some reason he didn't have the Shrivel, then it's possible that I could swing a comeback, because I have, I have like Halt, I have a lot of these stalling cards, and the Brain Basher does 4 damage to the crystals per hit. So, I could take his crystals down pretty quick, and I've got that Stoneling in a good position up top. So, it's like not impossible that I could pull a comeback if that hammer guy was to stay alive, but it didn't happen. So at this point, it's pretty much done. So obviously, I have to clear these Stonelings in order to stay alive another turn. I do have the Spiderlings, so I can. But what I have to do here is I have to play Halt, which limits him to 2. It gives me 1 more turn, basically. This is all kind of irrelevant. Like, I know I'm pretty much dead. The only other option I could have had was to spend 2 Spiderlings to kill both of the Stonelings next to the crystal, and then spawn a Spiderling on top of it, which then would theoretically buy me another turn if he doesn't have Nutlobber. But at this point, I knew that he hadn't played any Nutlobbers yet, so he is really likely that he had one. But it is totally a moot point at this point. Like, I knew that there's basically no way to come back from this. So I think I play one more set here. Well, I can clear 2 of his. It's funny. I can actually clear 2 of his Stonelings there, and then play the Phantom up top. Which, again, if he doesn't have a Nutlobber or any ranged unit, then that would buy me another turn again. And you never know. Piece by piece, I think I'd have like 2 turns left once fatigue hit, but he has the Nutlobber here and just hits it. So anyway, so that's this is a pretty well played game. Certainly well played by him. He didn't make any mistakes this game, and he had the organize when he needed it, and so that was it. So anyway, stay tuned. We queued against each other in the next game, and so I'm going to do another commentary on that one too. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.